Welcome to Starbound's second channel. My name is Veronica and I'll be your narrator today. But before we get into today's story, please check below to see if you've subscribed to our channel. It's 100% free and just allows our stories to pop up on your feed more often. Lazira watched a distant military tent from behind the cover of a rock, her binoculars bringing the image into sharp focus. As she observed the human warrior using some kind of chemical reaction to heat her food, Lazira considered her attack options. Should she get close enough to use her plasma weapons? Or would it be better to try something simpler, like using her secret poison? A faint sound, a nervous shifting of weight, drew her attention momentarily from the human. Without turning fully, Lazira pictured Billa behind her, no doubt a mess of agitated nerves. She could feel the vibrations of the furred lupin's unease, see her slate-gray pelt bristling, her wide, panicked eyes darting about. Billa's usual pack hunter instincts, Lazira knew, would be thoroughly useless now, swamped by a debilitating fear of the distant human warrior she could barely see. And then there was Trita. Lazira spared a fraction of her focus to recall the arachnoid's posture. Trita would be still, unnaturally so, her multifaceted eyes likely fixed on Billa's display of terror or, worse, on Lazira herself, trying to gauge the likelihood of being forced into a confrontation she so clearly dreaded. Lazira had seen that look before. Despite her bipedal, two-armed form mimicking something more humanoid, Trita's essence was that of a creature of patient traps and skittering evasion, not a frontline combatant. Lazira suppressed a flicker of irritation as she stared at her little squad, the emotion barely causing a ripple across her scaled features. Her elongated, subtly coffin-shaped head, reminiscent of the deadly Terran mambas, remained perfectly still, her piercing yellow eyes with their vertical pupils unblinking as she regarded the cowardice in her two subordinates. She finally let out a hiss. "The target is isolated. We must decide between acting now or waiting until it leaves the shelter." Billa whimpered, a low sound barely above the wind. "Lazira, must be That's a human woman! The reports from the Galactic front were—" She trailed off, her fur visibly trembling. "War reports are often exaggerated to mask incompetence," Lazira cut in, her voice cold. "The Dahar Association requires this planet, Billa. We can't allow a non-allied species to grow and develop strength in our backyard. Just imagine the chaos if the natives ever developed antimatter bombs. Are you suggesting we desert the army because of a single soft-skinned primitive?" Trita shifted, her voice a dry rustle, contrasting Billa's emotional outburst. "It is not the softness of their skin that is a concern, Lazira, but their strength and the skills. Why did the humans even involve themselves? This world means little to them strategically." Lazira's head tilted, a reptilian gesture of consideration, though her gaze remained fixed toward the human's tent. "The humans claim the natives of Xylos appealed for aid. Apparently, humanity wants to project its power and be seen as a galactic guardians." She practically spat the last words. "They align with these Xylan tree dwellers and see us as enemies. It's a disease, this human sentimentality, and it's spreading." Billa's whimper solidified into a desperate plea, her tail lowered and her fur deflating like a balloon. "But Lazira, this one human, is it truly worth our lives? The generals worry about antimatter bombs decades from now, but our survival is at stake now." Trita's dry rustle cut through Billa's emotional appeal, her tone devoid of panic, but heavy with caution. "The lupine is not wrong, Commander. The recommended advantage to engage a human is 5 against 1, but there are only 3 of us." Lazira's yellow eyes narrowed to slits as she finally turned her full attention to her subordinates. The binoculars lowered from her face, and when she spoke, her voice carried the cold authority that had earned her commander's rank.
"Listen carefully, both of you," she began,
her forked tongue flicking out briefly to taste the air.
"You speak of survival as if cowering behind rocks will guarantee it. Let me enlighten you about the nature of military hierarchy and the mathematics of staying alive in this war."
She gestured with one clawed hand toward the distant tent.
"The human represents an obstacle to our mission objectives. Command expects results, not excuses. Do you know what happens to squads that return empty-handed?"
Billa's ears flattened against her skull, but Lazura pressed on without mercy.
"Demotion, reassignment to the front lines, reduction in rations, loss of protective equipment privileges. The generals have little patience for incompetence."
Her voice dropped to a threatening whisper.
"I have seen entire units stripped of rank and sent to assault fortified human positions with nothing but basic plasma rifles."
Trita's multiple eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep consideration among her species.
But what are the consequences for dying in this attempt? Dead soldiers receive no promotions, true?"
Lazura acknowledged with a cold smile that revealed her fangs.
"But successful elimination of human targets? That brings commendations, better equipment, assignment to safer reconnaissance roles, increased food allocations, and most importantly, distance from the main battle lines where humans deploy their heavy weapons."
Billa's whimpering had subsided to anxious panting.
But what if we fail? What if she kills us?" "We won't,"
Lazura replied matter-of-factly.
"Not if we are smart."
She turned back toward the human's position, raising her binoculars again.
"The choice is simple. Take this calculated risk for significant reward or certain demise."
Lazura noticed the shift in their postures. Still fearful, but no longer paralyzing terror. The cold logic of military advancement had begun to penetrate their panic. However, she could sense they remained unconvinced about their actual chances of success. Her experience as a commander told her that fear of consequences alone won't be enough. She needed to make them believe they could actually win this engagement.
"I see doubt still clouding your judgment,"
she said, lowering her binoculars once more. She pointed to the rock outcropping beside her.
"Retrieve your binoculars, both of you. Position yourselves here beside me. We will conduct a proper reconnaissance of our target and develop a strategy based on facts, not fear."
Her voice carried the snap of military command.
"That is an order."
Billa hesitated, her lupin features torn between ingrained pack loyalty and individual terror. Trita remained motionless for several heartbeats before taking action. As her subordinates began to comply with her orders, Lazura felt a familiar satisfaction. Command required not just tactical skill, but the ability to transform panic into purpose, fear into action. Trita approached first, her unusual binoculars, if they could even be called that, already in hand. The device was made using arachnoid engineering, designed to accommodate her multiple eyes with a complex array of lenses and adjustment mechanisms. Billa followed more reluctantly, her standard military binoculars clenched in trembling paws. The Lupin's equipment was sturdy but basic. Military-issue optics designed for beings with 2 frontal eyes. They arranged themselves along the rocky cover, Lazura in the center with her subordinates flanking her position. The stone formation provided excellent concealment while offering multiple angles of observation toward the humans' camp.
"Now,"
Lazura said, settling into her position,
"we observe."
Through her binoculars, the distant scene came into sharp focus. The military tent was expertly concealed among the native vegetation. Purple-leafed shrubs and twisted mineral formations that dotted this sections of Xylos. The camouflage was impressive. Without their elevated position and quality optics, the human's shelter would have been nearly invisible. The human herself was a steady and controlled alertness. She sat cross-legged beside a small chemical heating unit, methodically consuming what appeared to be military rations. And even while eating, her head turned regularly, scanning her perimeter for enemies. Most significantly, Lazira noted the long metallic weapon strapped across the human's back. The rifle looked heavy, its barrel length suggesting significant range capability. The human's body armor was equally impressive. Layered protection that covered vital areas while maintaining mobility. Memory stirred as Lazira studied the figure. Command's mission briefing had mentioned this particular human. Her transport ship had been destroyed 3 days ago, along with the rest of her squad. According to intelligence reports, she was awaiting extraction, but communication intercepts suggested the rescue operation had been delayed. This human was alone, cut off from support, surviving on limited supplies while maintaining a defensive position. Despite her isolation, the human's behavior demonstrated why her species had earned such a fearsome reputation. Even now, alone and presumably under stress, she maintained tactical awareness. "There," Lazira whispered to her companions. "Do you see how she maintains her watch pattern?" Trita's multiple eyes tracked the human's movements through her complex optical array. Textbook defensive behavior, she admitted grudgingly. "Yes," Lazira continued. "But observe also her limitations. She is alone. She has finite ammunition. She cannot retreat without abandoning her equipment, and she cannot advance without leaving her defensive position." She lowered her binoculars and turned to address both subordinates directly. "This is why Command considers this mission feasible. Yes, she is dangerous, but she is also constrained by circumstances beyond her control." Billa had been following the human's movements with growing unease. "But Lazira, look at her weapon. Look at her armor. If we approach from multiple directions as you suggested, she'll still have clear sight lines to all of us. This terrain offers minimal cover for our advance." Trita nodded in agreement, her optical equipment revealing details invisible to standard binoculars. "The Lupin is correct. From this distance, our plasma rifles wouldn't reach her." Lazira listened to their objections with growing irritation, but she forced herself to consider their points objectively. They were not wrong about tactical challenges. The human had chosen her position well, with excellent fields of fire and minimal cover for approaching hostiles. "Your concerns about engagement range are valid," she conceded. "But direct assault is not our only option." Trita's eyes refocused on Lazira. "You have a better plan in mind?" "Several," Lazira replied, her mind racing through tactical options. "We could wait for nightfall. We could attempt to force her to relocate. Or—" She paused, considering a third option that had been lurking at the edge of her consciousness. "Or we could return to our base camp and retrieve the specialized laser rifle from our equipment cache," Billa suggested hopefully. "That should give us the range advantage we need for a clean elimination." "No!" Lazira said firmly. "Returning to base means explaining our delay to Command." Trita made a soft clicking sound and asked, "Then what alternative do you propose, Commander?" Instead of answering immediately, Lazira turned away from the observation position and moved toward a smaller rock formation where she had left her personal equipment. Her rucksack rested against the stone. She knelt beside the pack and began unfastening the main compartment. Beneath the standard survival gear and ammunition reserves, her clawed fingers found what she was seeking: a small wooden box, roughly the size of her palm, secured with simple metal clasps. "There is another way," she said, lifting the box with careful reverence. "A method that requires neither long-range accuracy nor dangerous close-quarters engagement." Both Billa and Trita had turned to watch her, their attention drawn by the unusual care with which she had handled the mysterious container. The box itself was unremarkable. Plain wood, utilitarian construction. "What is that?" Billa asked, her curiosity overcoming her anxiety for the first time since they had begun this mission. Trita's multiple eyes focused on the box with intense interest.
"I do not recognize that equipment type, Commander. It was not listed in our standard gear inventory."
Lazura smiled, the first genuine expression of pleasure she had shown since discovering the human's position.
"That is because this is specialized equipment, issued only to soldiers of my species."
She began working the metal clasps.
"What I am about to show you represents thousands of years of evolutionary adaptation, refined through military application into a living weapon system."
The lid opened with a soft creak, revealing an interior lined with what appeared to be soft vegetation. Nestled within this organic cushioning was something that made both of her subordinates recoil instinctively. The creature was approximately 10 centimeters in length, its segmented body supported by dozens of tiny legs that moved in undulating waves. Most disturbing were its sensory appendages, delicate antennae that constantly sampled the air, and tiny compound eyes that seemed to track movement with predatory intelligence. Billa leaped backward with a sharp yelp, her lupin instinct screaming warnings about venomous arthropods. Trita remained motionless, but her multiple eyes had dilated with alarm. Lazura laughed, a genuine sound of amusement at their reactions.
"Peace, both of you. This creature poses no threat to allies. Its training is quite specific."
"Training?" Trita asked carefully, maintaining her distance from the opened box.
"The Vezak,"
Lazura explained, gently stroking the creature's segmented back with one claw tip.
"They are small, fast, intelligent within their limited scope, and utterly loyal to their handlers."
Billa had stopped retreating, but remained crouched in a defensive posture. "But what does it do? How is it a weapon?" Lazura's smile revealed her fangs.
"The Vezak serves as a delivery system. Observe."
She lifted the creature from its container, and it immediately began moving across her scaled palm with quick, purposeful steps. Its many legs found purchase on her rough skin, while its antennae continued their constant chemical sampling of the environment.
"They are trained to seek out warm-blooded targets and deliver their payload," she continued. "Too small to trigger most defensive instincts, fast enough to avoid casual swatting, and intelligent enough to navigate complex terrains."
Understanding began to dawn in Trita's multiple eyes.
"The payload being your species' venom?" "Yes,"
Lazura confirmed.
"Each Vezak carries a concentrated dose of neurotoxin, sufficient to incapacitate creatures many times larger than a human."
Billa's ears had perked up with interest despite her continued wariness. "It will simply walk toward the human, just like that?"
"It will,"
Lazura explained.
"Trust me when I say this."
Trita clicked thoughtfully.
"And the toxin, is it sufficient to kill a human outright?"
Lazura considered the question carefully.
"It has not been tested enough on their species to be certain. More likely, it will cause complete respiratory failure within a quarter of an hour."
She gently returned the creature to its container, but left the lid open so it could continue sampling the air.
"Even if the human somehow survives the initial dose, she will be incapacitated enough for us to approach safely and complete the elimination."
For the first time since beginning this mission, Billa and Trita exchanged a look that contained hope rather than despair. The mathematics of their situation had suddenly shifted dramatically in their favor. Both subordinates were nodding now, their body language shifting from defensive terror to anticipation for battle. "Do it," Billa said firmly.
Deploy your creature."
Lazura lifted the Vezek from its container once more, feeling its legs grip her scales with eager strength. The creature had been motionless during captivity, but now its antennae were moving rapidly, sampling the rich chemical information carried on the alien breeze.
"Once I place it on the ground, there is no recall," she warned. "The Vezek will proceed directly to target until successful delivery or destruction. We must prepare to support its mission or exploit the opportunity it creates."
Understood. Both subordinates replied in unison. Lazura knelt carefully, extending her hand toward the rocky ground between their position and the distant human camp. The Vezek's antennae oriented immediately toward the heat signature ahead, its primitive neural pathways already calculating the optimal approach route.
"Hunt well, little warrior,"
she whispered in her native tongue, and placed the creature on the alien stone. The effect was immediate. The Vezek's legs found purchase on the rough surface, and it began moving with surprising speed, its body undulating in a pattern that made it nearly invisible against the mottled terrain. Within seconds, it had disappeared among the scattered rocks, visible only as occasional movements among the purple vegetation. All three soldiers raised their binoculars, tracking the creature's progress toward the unsuspecting human. The tiny predator moved quickly, pausing only briefly to navigate obstacles before resuming its deadly straight-line approach. Ahead, the human continued her meal, unaware that death was crawling steadily toward her position across the alien landscape. They watched in complete silence, barely daring to breathe as a tiny creature made its way across a treacherous terrain. The human was alert, but her attention focused on threats at human scale, movement in the tree line, potential sniper positions, aerial approaches. She never looked down at the ground beside her feet. Through their magnified optics, they watched the tiny predator approach the human's boots. The creature paused briefly, its sensory organs confirming the presence of its target, then began the final phase of its mission. The Vezek climbed onto the human's leg, its claws finding purchase on the tough fabric of her combat uniform. The ascent was swift and sure. The human noticed when the creature reached her thigh. Her hand moved reflexively to brush at what she probably assumed was a native insect. But the Vezek had already positioned itself for the strike. The sting was delivered at once, a single sharp injection of concentrated venom directly through the fabric into her flesh. The human's reaction was immediate and violent. She grabbed the creature and hurled it away from her body with a cry of pain and alarm. The Vezek landed several meters away, but its mission was already complete. The human drew her sidearm and emptied an entire magazine into the small creature, reducing it to fragments. But the damage was done. The venom was already entering her bloodstream, beginning its systematic assault on her nervous system. The three soldiers watched in silence as the human's body began responding to the toxin. Her breathing quickened noticeably, and her skin took on a pale, grayish cast that was visible even at their distance. She spoke aloud, probably cursing, though they were too far away to understand the words. For several minutes, she maintained her defensive posture, sweeping the area with a rifle and staring directly at their concealed position. The intensity of her gaze was unnerving, and all three aliens pressed themselves lower against their rocky cover. But the venom was relentless. Gradually, her movements became less coordinated, her breathing more labored. The weapon trembled in her grip as muscle control began to fail. Finally, she sat down heavily, her back against the tense support structure. Her eyes remained open, but her head lolled forward. The rifle slipped from nerveless fingers to rest across her lap. For long minutes, she remained motionless, except for the shallow rise and fall of her chest. Then even that subtle movement slowed, became irregular, and finally stopped entirely. Is she dead? Billa asked, her voice filled with awed disbelief.
She appears to be,
Tretta replied, though her tone carried uncertainty. Lazira studied the motionless figure through her binoculars. The human's position was that of a complete unconsciousness, head forward, limbs relaxed, no response to environmental stimuli. Either the venom had killed her outright, or she was so deeply unconscious that the distinction was academic.
"Weapons ready?" she ordered. "We approach to confirm the kill and complete our mission."
Both subordinates hesitated. Are you certain she's incapacitated? Billa asked nervously.
The Vezek has never failed,
Lazira replied confidently. Despite their recent success, neither Billa nor Trita showed enthusiasm for approaching the apparently unconscious human. They had heard too many stories about human tenacity, human cunning, human refusal to die when any reasonable creature would surrender to superior force.
"That is an order,"
Lazira added sharply.
"We have a mission to complete."
Reluctantly, her subordinates checked their plasma weapons and began following her down from their rocky observation post. The approach to the human's position would take several minutes across the open terrain, but with their target unconscious, they could afford to move carefully and maintain proper tactical spacing. The alien landscape stretched before them, purple vegetation, twisted mineral formations, and scattered stone outcroppings that had provided such excellent concealment for the Vezek's approach. But to their size, the landscape was mostly bad cover. As they moved closer, tension built with every step. The human remained motionless, but combat experience had taught all three soldiers to trust nothing until verified at close range. Weapons stayed ready, eyes remained alert, and movement patterns maintained tactical dispersion that would minimize casualties if their target proved to be more resilient than expected.
50 meters,
Lazira reported quietly.
Maintain approach formation.
The human had not moved. Her position was exactly as they had last observed, slumped against the tent, weapon fallen across her lap, head forward in what appeared to be complete unconsciousness. Everything indicated successful mission completion. The human was unconscious, possibly dead, certainly no longer a threat to their operations. Command would be pleased with such an efficient elimination of an isolated enemy combatant. Yet suddenly, the human's eye snapped open. Before Billa and Trita could even register the threat, before they could adjust their aim or fire their weapons, the human warrior was already moving. Lazira's combat reflexes saved her life. Her plasma shot discharged automatically, striking the human's reinforced chest armor with a burst of superheated energy that should have been instantly lethal. Instead, the human rolled aside, brought her rifle to bear, and began firing. The disaster unfolded with terrifying speed. Billa took multiple projectiles to her torso, her lupin cry cut short as kinetic force threw her backward onto the alien stone. Trita managed one step toward cover before high-velocity ammunition shredded her arachnoid form, her multiple eyes going dark as her body crumpled. Lazira threw herself sideways, her serpentine reflexes carrying her behind the nearest rock formation as bullets shattered stone where she had been standing. The human was on her feet now, advancing despite whatever effects the venom might still be causing. This was impossible. The Vezek's toxin should have killed any warm-blooded creature within minutes. Even if the human had somehow survived the initial dose, she should be unconscious, paralyzed, completely incapacitated. Instead, she was not only conscious, but combat effective, moving with the fluid grace of a trained predator despite having been apparently unconscious moments before. Lazira's mind raced through tactical options while her body moved on pure instinct. Cover to cover, using the scattered terrain features to break line of sight, firing plasma bursts whenever she had a clear shot. But the human's return fire was devastatingly accurate, forcing her to spend more time seeking protection than engaging the target. The mathematics of the engagement had shifted catastrophically. Instead of 3 against 1 unconscious enemy, she now faced a single combat-experienced human in a fair fight. She remembered the briefing materials. Humans routinely carried weapons and ammunition that would burden most species, their musculature allowing them to fight effectively even while bearing loads that would cripple other bipeds. Their reflexes were sharp, their endurance remarkable, their tactical thinking adapted to the brutal reality of projectile warfare. Most importantly, they were persistent. A human warrior would pursue an enemy across kilometers of hostile terrain rather than allow a threat to escape and potentially harm their allies. The realization struck her. She could not win this engagement. Her plasma weapon was powerful, but that range was lower. Her armor was adequate for energy weapons, but provided minimal protection against kinetic projectiles. Her species' advantages, stealth, venom, reptilian patience, were useless in direct combat against an alert and mobile opponent. Retreat was her only option. Lazera began moving in a pattern designed to break contact rather than maintain engagement. Longer movements between cover positions, shots fired to suppress rather than eliminate, gradual angling toward terrain that would allow high-speed withdrawal. The human seemed to recognize her intent and pressed the attack more aggressively, trying to maintain contact and prevent escape. The projectile buzzed past her head close enough to feel the air displacement, and Lazera abandoned all pretense of tactical engagement. She ran. Her species' physiology was built for short bursts of explosive speed rather than sustained pursuit, but terror provided motivation beyond normal limits. Behind her, she could hear the human following, not at a dead sprint, but at the steady, ground-eating pace that her kind can maintain for hours. The alien landscape blurred past as she fled through rock formations, around twisted mineral spires, over patches of purple vegetation that crushed beneath her feet. Her breath came in harsh gasps that burned her throat, and muscles began to cramp from sustained exertion. But she kept running, driven by the knowledge that stopping meant death, and the desperate hope that reaching her base camp would provide safety in numbers. Her surviving squad members would rally to her defense, establish proper firing positions, force the pursuing human to face superior numbers in prepared positions. The terrain began to look familiar, landmarks she recognized from their outbound patrol route. The base camp was perhaps 2 kilometers ahead, hidden in a natural depression that provided concealment from aerial reconnaissance. She would reach safety, report the engagement, organize a proper response to eliminate this troublesome human. A bullet cracked past her head, close enough to part the scales along her skull. Panic flooded her nervous system. She had underestimated the human's speed, overestimated her own endurance. The pursuing warrior was gaining ground, bringing her target within effective range of those devastating projectile weapons. Lazera abandoned any remaining tactical discipline and kept running for her life. Rocks, vegetation, mineral formation, everything became a blur. Her only thought was reaching the perimeter guards, whose plasma weapons could provide covering fire while she reached the safety of prepared positions. Her body was overheating, her species' regulatory systems overwhelmed by the sustained exertion in an alien atmosphere. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision, and her legs began to tremble with exhaustion. But ahead, she could see the familiar landmarks that marked the outer security perimeter of their base camp. Alert! She gasped at the 2 guards as she stumbled past their concealment positions. Human pursuing! Combat ready! She managed perhaps 10 more steps before her strength finally betrayed her. The world spun wildly. Her legs collapsed beneath her, and darkness claimed her consciousness as a sound of plasma fire erupted behind her, her guards engaging the pursuing human in what she desperately hoped would be a successful defense. When awareness slowly returned, it brought not the safety of her camp's medical bay, but something far worse. The acrid smell of plasma burns, mixed with the metallic scent of projectile wounds, filled her nostrils. Bodies lay scattered throughout what remained of their base camp. Her squad mates, the guards, everyone she had served with. Smoking craters marked where plasma shots had missed their targets, while the precise groupings of bullet holes in equipment and structures spoke of the usual human marksmanship. Lazera tried to move and discovered thin restraints around her arms and legs, some kind of flexible binding material that held her effectively immobilized against the ground where she lay among the carnage of her unit. The restraints were barely visible, almost like wire, but impossibly strong despite their delicate appearance. Footsteps approached. The human woman appeared in her field of vision, looking down at her with professional detachment. Her weapon was ready, but not directly aimed, the posture of someone completely in control of the situation. Close up, Lazera could see the lingering effects of her Vezek's venom. There was a slight tremor in the human's hands. Her complexion remained somewhat pale, and her pupils were still dilated. But she was alive, alert, and undeniably victorious despite having single-handedly destroyed an entire alien military outpost. "Why am I alive?" Lazera managed to croak, her throat dry from exertion and terror. The human's voice was cold, utterly professional. "My original mission parameters included capturing one of your poison delivery creatures for analysis. Since your little bug didn't survive my response, capturing the handler who deployed it serves the same research objectives." Disbelief flooded through Azura's consciousness. She stared up at the human warrior, trying to process what she was hearing. You destroyed my entire camp, alone! That makes no tactical sense whatsoever!" "Doesn't it?" The human shrugged with casual indifference. "I'd been spotted conducting surveillance. My extractions transport wasn't arriving for another 48 hours minimum. Sitting in my defensive position, waiting to be overwhelmed by superior numbers, seemed like a poor survival strategy." The human adjusted her grip on her weapon, scanning the perimeter with practiced vigilance even while talking. Taking the initiative seemed like a better option. Strike first, eliminate the immediate threat, secure the area. Simple. Lazera's serpentine head shook in confusion and growing horror.
"But the Vezek! You were completely incapacitated! We watched you stop breathing!"
"Your little centipede?" The human's expression shifted slightly, showing what might have been amusement. "That thing put me down for maybe 2 minutes. Just long enough for a decent power nap, really." The revelation hit Lazera like a physical blow. 2 minutes. Their ultimate biological weapon, their species' carefully engineered advantage, their trump card against human expansion, and it had provided nothing more than a brief rest period?
"But that's impossible," she whispered. "The Vezek carries concentrated neurotoxin that kill those of warm blood. It should have killed you."
"Killed me?" The human actually laughed, a sharp sound devoid of humor. "That thing made me drowsy, relaxed my muscles a bit. Hell, I've had stronger reactions to recreational drugs back home." Lazera stared up at her captor in growing bewilderment.
"Then why do you want it? If it barely affects you, why was capturing one part of your mission parameters?"
The human's expression became more serious, almost contemplative. "Our scientists are very interested in creatures like yours. Specifically, they're studying the biochemical compounds for potential medical applications."
"Medical applications?"
"Sleep aids. The human explained matter-of-factly. A lot of our fighters have trouble sleeping after extended combat operations. PTSD, Post-traumatic stress disorder. They lie awake for hours, minds racing, unable to rest properly between missions. She gestured vaguely toward where Vezek had been destroyed. Your little friend might be exactly what our medical researchers need to develop better treatment options. The irony was so profound that Lazura felt her consciousness wavering again. Their species' most feared biological weapon, the product of millennia of evolutionary refinement and military application, was being studied by humans as a potential remedy for insomnia?
So you're telling me, she said weakly, that our ultimate advantage against your species is going to become a sleeping pill?
Promising treatment options for trauma-related sleep disorders, the human corrected. Lazura closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the devastating absurdity of it all. Everything she had believed about human vulnerability, about her species' tactical superiority, about the balance of power in this galactic conflict, all of it crumbling under the weight of the single, humiliating truth. Her people's ultimate weapon was nothing more than a mild sedative to these creatures. As consciousness began to fade once more, she wondered dimly what other advantages her species thought they possessed that would prove equally meaningless against human adaptability and resilience. The last thing she heard was a human speaking into her communication device, requesting extraction and prisoner transport with the same professional calm she had shown throughout this entire impossible encounter.